Hello, I'm Brian Thornton, and this is Living the Classical Life.
Brian, it's such a delight to have you on the show and to welcome you into my home.
Thank you. What a beautiful place you have here. It's such a pleasure.
Thank
and
you
it's
so much.
wonderful playing with you, really.
Oh, it's always so much fun. So Brian, whenever I think about you, out of all the wonderful musicians I know, I think of you as one of the most passionate persons that I've ever met. Tell me, when you were a kid, were you the type of person who would get carried away with passion and excitement for life? Or did that come later?
You know, interestingly enough, I think my passion for music started with my teacher in Dallas. Holocaust survivor, let us know all these amazing stories about his life. And as far as passion for food, always had it. Would have chocolate sundae every day when I came home from school. You know, I think I always lived large. And I think it took a mentor, a great teacher, to really show me the path in the way to put that into music.
So you had a legendary and magnetic teacher, Lev Aronson.
Right.
He brought together so many great musicians. What was it about him that had such an influence over people?
Right. I think there were several things. The first thing that comes to mind was that his story was all about triumph over adversity. You know, he had spent 4 years in concentration camps, and that was far longer than many people survived. So, in a way, so many things were taken away from him that people knew about his family. He had a blossoming solo career that was taken from him in his cellos, and so many things that meant the world to him, and he lost everything. Belief in God, belief in people. The one thing that was left for him was music. And people understood that, they got that. You know, he was one of those very fiery teachers that yelled. You know, we don't have teachers that yell anymore, of course. We can't really yell at our students, and I wouldn't want to. I'm not that type of teacher. But I have to say, when he yelled at us, we listened, and I personally loved it. It was a symbol to me of his dedication and what music meant to him. And he had this bigger-than-life personality that I think spoke to people. And his survival alone was testament to what music could really do.
So how old were you when you went to Lev Aronson?
Okay, so I first met him when I was 12, and I was a late bloomer, which is, of course, really tough for teenagers in locker rooms to see these big fellas walking around. Anyway, for me, I was about this tall, and I think I had a cello that was about a foot taller than I was when I was 12 when I first met Lev. And I played a Vivaldi sonata for him. And I just remember he got this glow in his eye when he was listening. And there were all these older students standing around him when I was playing. You know, I was just doing what I really loved and what I wanted to do. But I just remember all these older students looking at me and considering me, and he had a very competitive class. And I remember him having an impact on me, that he would have this entourage of incredible students that would rely on his every word. And I really felt that when I first met him.
I know that you're a perfectionist. How do you balance this sense of ambition and perfectionism against what might be the inevitable discouragement from a teacher who's yelling?
Oh, right. Well, the yelling for me was a positive at the time in my life. I loved his dedication, and I loved the fact that you brought up perfectionism in art and music. Because I think, for myself anyway, I found that perfectionism is actually the enemy of creativity and music. I feel like, for me, it creates pathways to health and emotional challenges. That's only in my experience. But I've noticed that throughout the years, as I've encouraged myself to become more creative and loving and accepting of the position that I'm in and of myself, I feel like my music and art grows. And the perfectionism would put a damper on those feelings for me.
If I think of all the conversations that we've had, and as I've gotten to know you a little bit in the way that you live your life, I sense that balance and wellness are very important. This is a subject that I've wanted to talk about more on the show.
For sure.
But this balance, is that a conscious effort for you? Was it always there? At what point did it enter into your life?
Well, this is such an interesting topic because so many musicians, we play with pain in some way or another. even if it's the pain of not being able to express ourselves, that will often manifest itself in some kind of physical symptom. A lot of us have these problems, whether it be back problems, shoulder problems. I think probably the majority of cellists in my orchestra, in the Cleveland Orchestra, have had some kind of surgery associated with the cello, with cello playing. It's a lot to have to go through. Wellness is so important for artists, and we are basically small muscle athletes. And we have to treat our bodies and our emotions and our minds in a very caring way, because they actually go through a lot of abuse. To be able to sit here like this for 6 to 8 to 10 hours a day, it's a very strange thing to do. And I can't even imagine doing this for that long. It's something that humans weren't supposed to do. We were supposed to run, we were supposed to hunt, and there are lots of things that we do that are unnatural. So the more that we can consider the way that we treat ourselves, the better our music comes out.
How do you pace yourself in your daily work? So for example, I'm thinking about some conservatory students who have the ambition and they just want to practice for 8 to 10 hours a day.
For sure.
And then in some cases, they don't know how to pace themselves. Inevitably, some can get injured.
For sure. And injury, I think, definitely manifests itself typically late teenage years, early 20s, because when we're younger, everything works a little bit better and more flexible, pliable, and such. My personal experience was when I first got into the Cleveland Orchestra when I was 24. I was used to practicing a long time, but not playing. So I got into the orchestra and I started playing for probably 4 to 5 hours a day and practicing as well. And the playing for me created tension and nerve pinch type of
So you did experience
situation.
Conditions.
Absolutely, for sure. And it led me down a path of, not only experiencing pleasure when I played as much as I could and not pain, but to understand how that worked in my daily life and how it would actually lend itself to a performance and how I could think about things to distract myself. There's a lot of different things to focus on when you're playing 150 concerts a year with some of your best friends.
Absolutely. But really, how do you pace that? What do you do now to avoid that kind of injury?
Right. What I make sure and do, I do warm-up exercises, which I teach lots of my students, and they were given to me by the same professionals that work with the Cavaliers and the professional sports teams in town. And it's basically a kind of warm-up exercise where you go from large muscles and large joints down to the small muscles and joints. And people walk around Severance, and whenever they see me doing these muscle movements, and I tend to rotate things and get the juices flowing in the joints. They tend to do it back at me, which makes me very happy. I like it inspired other people to treat their bodies well.
Has it helped? Has it helped prevent injury?
Oh, it's awesome. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everyone is different. Everyone's body is a different kind of amazing machine. And the body is so complicated. You can't get away scot-free. Hardly anyone does. Maybe Janos Starker did because of his incredible genetics, was able to smoke and drink like crazy until, he passed away in his 90s. But most of us as musicians, to be able to take care of ourselves, we have to know ourselves.
How long do you do those warm-up exercises at an interval? How long do you do those?
Yeah, typically I do them probably for 10 minutes before I start my regular playing or warm-up.
Do you set limits on yourself as to how much practicing you do in a day?
No, I have goals about what I want to cover, and especially the context and my outcome of what I want to say with the music. I think on a daily basis, if one has that clear in your mind, it's so important to be able to project that into yourself and through your instrument on a daily basis, moment to moment. And I think the key to that is having the energy to do it. Like you talked about, how do you treat yourself? How do you get yourself to get the energy? Everyone's different. Some people listen to rock music. I have a great friend in the orchestra who would always watch Rocky before a big audition.
You're kidding.
Yeah. And sometimes I go and run stairs. A lot of times I'll listen to some of my favorite artists like Radu Lupu, or I'll read the diary of, or the letters that Vincent van Gogh wrote to his brother. Things that really get your juices flowing. Everyone has different options. for making that happen.
So back to my other question. I happen to know that you take exquisitely good care of your health. What do you do with either diet or lifestyle exercise outside of just those warm-up exercises that you described?
Right. Well, I think that all of that really definitely comes out in music. If you do respect yourself and respect your surroundings and the people that you're around. So I basically eat to make myself last. I find foods that I really love that give me energy, that I know help myself in the long run. I want to be playing cello at a pretty high level when I'm 75, hopefully. That's the goal. That's the end goal. 75 or 80, things tend to go a little bit downhill because of, nerve degeneration or muscles or what have you. But yeah, I think the goal for me is to be around for my kids for as long as I possibly can, which is the most important thing to me, and my family, and just to make sure that, diet, the whole plan around the day, how you respect yourself, really reflects itself in the music.
Do you think that it's possible to be a great and complete, balanced musician and not take care of your health? I'm sure you can think of examples.
Oh gosh, I've been there, for sure. When I've had a really fun Halloween party on tour, for example. And I think the thing is everyone has their own limits and their own ways to have fun and let off steam. And I think you definitely need that, the human body. There's nobody that can get off scot-free without, eating a bar of chocolate, every so often, or just enjoying yourself with friends. I think that's a really great part of life. And I think that's part of living too. And I try not to be so controlling with that because I think that actually comes out in music too.
Okay, let's talk about the psychology of your life, because you entered the Cleveland Orchestra at the age of 24. Most people don't get such an opportunity.
Right.
Were you ready for that?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, I'm so happy that you asked that question. And the great thing about me, where I was at the time, is I absolutely was convinced that I had no idea what I was doing. For sure.
Really?
Oh yeah. I sat down for my first rehearsal. The orchestra had just come back from tour, a European tour, and played all 4 Brahms symphonies on tour. And so I sat down, 24, not having played any Brahms symphonies in my life and playing it with the greatest orchestra in the world.
Yes.
I totally backed off. I tried not to make any untoward noises or sounds or stick out. I tried to really learn from the inside out how to play in this really great orchestra. And I remember we played this beautiful cello section solo from the Second Symphony of Brahms. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the longtime members of the Cleveland Orchestra walking up to me after we had played it, this beautiful cello section solo. And he said, Brian, we play with tempered tuning here. And this was someone that sat about 50 feet away.
And he singled you out and decided
Right.
to make that kind of jab at you.
For sure. And I took it in the best light, and he was a very warm-hearted, good person. Very sweet. Music always comes first. It's true when I pick up the cello or anybody else in the Cleveland Orchestra. Music always comes first. And it seemed like it's something that maybe one could take personally, but I just was personally amazed that he was able to pick that out.
Okay, so how did you deal in your life with that type of feeling of intimidation? Because we all face it.
Oh,
whether
sure.
it be walking onto this particular stage, or we're
Right.
doing that audition where we have to impress someone, or in this case, having to impress your colleagues in the Cleveland Orchestra.
Right.
What was your approach to dealing with that? Were you a naturally courageous person?
Right. Oh gosh, no. I think one of the things that I loved about studying martial arts when I did was going to study an art with a different kind of teacher. And I asked my teacher when I went to Japan what the most important quality of a person was who was studying an art, a martial art or any other art. And he said courage. And at the time I found that really interesting and unexpected. And it's taken me so long to kind of think through that. But courage is something that I've struggled with very much. I have intense stage fright.
To this day?
Absolutely, for sure. And a lot of it has to do with my focus, for sure. A lot of times perfectionism, for me, is the wrong focus for stage fright. I feel like if one is able to say something musically, bring in someone into your musical world or have a story or an idea, it's much more convincing than just playing the cello well. You know, there are millions of people in the world that can play cello really well, and thousands that can play better than me. But if I can present myself with a story, something that really draws somebody in, I think that's a victory. And I think people can have opinions about music. They can say, it was convincing or not. I was absolutely convinced of their portrayal of this music. Yes, that's the way that it really, I feel it should be. Someone, you know, at the same time, if someone says, well, that was out of tune, sure. That's kind of a black and white kind of approach to playing the cello. And it can be something that you can focus on. But if the music is always at the front of what people do, I think the nerves tend to go away because the focus is different.
Do you think that courage is innate, or do you think that it's a practiced mindset like you have described that you found at some point along the way?
Yeah, I think for sure I've definitely met people that did not experience nerves, which I find really fascinating. I'm not sure if they're lying to themselves to actually not have it. Or, I mean, all of us play these different mind games. You know, a lot of us in the world are afraid of public speaking.
Yes.
And the key to that is just doing it. Finding out why you do it, for one, why, you know, we play music or do public speaking. The reason, if the reason is convincing enough, then typically you can use the nerves to do good things.
Okay, so I have to ask you, you're in the Cleveland Orchestra and you play, 100 concerts a year? How do you prevent that from becoming routine in not the good way, as though this were just a job that you're just dialing in?
Right. I think focus is huge. Focus for me is really big. Making sure that I'm saying the right things. I mean, it's the easiest thing in the Cleveland Orchestra to come to work because people are nice. Everyone has music at the forefront of their thoughts, and everyone plays beautifully, plays at such a high level. So it's really easy for me to, first one, enjoy my job. Now, there are some things that get in the way of that. Pain. Of course, a lot of times I will experience pain while I'm playing. And it's an indication to me of that I should refocus, either my warm-up or what I'm thinking about. Say in the concert, I start analyzing my own playing in kind of a black and white manner. Perfectionism. Typically, that leads to physical pain for me. Either that, or I feel physical pain, and then I realize inside myself, oh, you're thinking about cello in a way that's causing you pain. This perfectionism. So basically, I make sure that I'm well rested, that I'm thinking along the right lines. I get there really early. I get to concerts and rehearsals at least an hour early. That's just for me. Everyone is totally different. Some people can sit down and just play the hell out of everything they can do. For me, I love to be there and to get myself in the right frame of mind.
How has being in the Cleveland Orchestra influenced you personally as a musician?
You know, it's amazing. I've actually now, I think, almost been in the orchestra in my life longer than I wasn't. So it's been a huge musical education, and then the education about what's important musically. You know, I get to listen to Emanuel Ax come and play the greatest concertos, or Yo-Yo Ma, or Lynn Harrell. You know, I get to hear these incredible players on a daily basis, and I get to figure out what makes it great.
So I want to talk about one of the most fascinating parts of your life, and that's your social activism. Where did that come from? Was this as a result of Lev Aronson and what he went through and his influence on you as a young child?
Right. You know, the stories that Mr. Aronson told me about his time in the concentration camps, it shocked me in a way. It shocked me into realizing how amazing the world can be, how well people can treat each other, and how poorly they can treat each other. This dichotomy of possibilities within every human being, I think that seed was planted in me by him at that time. That was so important to me. And it also awakened a different kind of compassion in me. Hearing these stories of seeing his sister for the last time, covered with lice, and him just wanting to help her through a barbed wire fence, and her not knowing him for one reason or another. These things were striking stories to me that really affected me and made me consider what's really important. We can play great music, and a lot of good can be done through beautiful music, consideration of art, what's important. But the thing is, if we use music to do great things, I think it's an even better approach, at least for me.
And what has your approach been to addressing equality?
Right.
Okay, so I have to give an example.
Okay.
I'm going to embarrass you a little.
Yeah, please.
So, in this country, when it became legal to have gay marriage on a federal level, on Facebook you wrapped yourself in a rainbow flag and you said, "This is for all my gay friends."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
How did you get to that point? And did you ever feel like taking a stance on issues that are important to you, is that risky?
Right. I think, fortunately for artists, we are given a bit of a pass by society to call attention to issues that really should be addressed. And, one can say, if I talk to maybe relatives that could be a little bit more conservative or friends, they say, "Oh, Brian, he's the artist, he's the crazy one." So, I feel like it gives me permission to really call attention to things that I feel like, should be called attention to. As far as the gay marriage issue for me, I think it was astonishing for me that it took so long. And it also indicates more compassion in the world, that people would consider that marriage is marriage and a relationship, that kind of accepting way of living. I think perhaps maybe easier for a cellist or an artist, but I think it gives us a chance to introduce that idea to others.
How about racial equality? How does that factor into your life?
Well, of course, it's a huge issue, especially now here in America, where we have, fortunately, the majority of people here in America are from different backgrounds than the people that maybe landed at Plymouth Rock. And I think that gives us a chance to really delve into what makes America really a great place. That we have all this diversity in different places that we came from. And the possibilities there that really make us a place of possibilities, of different ideas. And of course, racial ID is important to me, not only because my daughters are African American, but because it's just the right thing to do, really. Everyone should have the right to vote. Everyone should be counted as one person. It just makes sense.
You've performed at the White House, you've raised money for all sorts of causes. We recently played a benefit for the victims of the hurricanes recently this year. At what point did you realize that music could be a platform for you, not just to raise money, but to give you a voice?
Sure.
Casals comes to mind.
Oh, wow. What a humanitarian. I think he was a humanitarian first, before even a musician, with all the beautiful things that he did. Actually, part of it came out of a feeling of guilt, strangely enough. I see myself playing with the greatest orchestra in the world, playing a beautiful instrument, and literally, this is silly. We get a standing ovation for doing our job in the best way. Every single performance, it's silly. To be able to be rewarded as other people in the world should be rewarded for the kind of hard work that they do on a daily basis. Parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents, nurses, doctors, teachers, firefighters, people who really give themselves to the world as a whole. They deserve that kind of adulation. So I thought to myself, I really have to find out how to give some of this back and to really use music to spread goodness in the world. There's so much goodness being thrown at me. I grew up in a beautiful place, beautiful parents, amazing people. I need to start giving back a little bit.
Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for everything that you've done for all of us musically and for me personally.
Absolutely. It's really great to be here. Thank you.
It was fun.
Yes.